Very good evening. Welcome to the West Ham Weekly on the West Ham Voice on a Monday night. Thank you all for joining me. Well, it's probably only one thing that is worth talking about tonight, and that's, of course, the news that broke out earlier today that the board, the club have announced that David Moyes is to leave West Ham United. I don't think it really came as any big surprise that there was going to be an announcement made. Many people were sort of asking, well, are the board going to do this before the Luton game, or are they going to leave us hanging until the end of the season? And in a roundabout sort of way, I'm glad that the club have actually finally, admitted everything, what we all kind of knew, the worst kept secret at West Ham, that Moyes was definitely leaving the club. So I'm glad that they've done it before the weekend so that we can actually, for those who want to, for those who feel it's right to do so, and I'll be one of them, to thank David Moyes for what he's given West Ham United over the last 4.5 years or so. So at least they've done it before the game. Now, I know there's a lot of stuff on various social media channels to say that it's pretty much disgusting the way David Moyes has been treated. But it's damned if you do and damned if you don't in this situation. If we kept people hanging on and there was no looking for an alternative coach, head coach or whatever, then everyone would have been having a go at the club for not doing their planning in advance. So I kind of think we knew. I think the only thing that would have kept David Moyes at West Ham United was potential qualification for the 4th season in a row back into Europe. I think that died a death a couple of weeks back, but it was definitely nailed. The final nail in the coffin was at the weekend against Chelsea. And I think I kind of get why, in a way, the club didn't want to make an announcement about Moyes, because if he had managed to get us back into Europe, who could argue that he wouldn't have been, he wasn't due yet another contract? I don't know. I'll leave that for you to debate. So West Ham were doing what I guess we wanted them to do. Just in case David Moyes was not going to be kept on, we need to be looking for an alternative manager. And that's what we did. So I get some people saying that David Moyes has been hard done by, but at the same time, if we weren't looking for a potential alternative manager, head coach to David Moyes, then the club would have been accused of not doing their job. Who knows? Anyway, look, the time has come for him to leave. Even I admitted that throughout most of this, at least this second half of the season, which has been extremely poor to say the least. We've played relegation football, haven't we? 4 wins this calendar year. And there was a lot of stuff that David Moyes did good, but there's a lot of stuff that we all knew David Moyes didn't do so well. The frustration with late substitutions, the frustration with sometimes not using enough subs to actually make changes in the game. Certain players used sparingly, so that when it did come for them to come on and try and make an impression, they weren't really ready to do so. They weren't sort of embedded within the first team. But he also too much respect for the so-called big clubs. Every time we spoke about the likes of Liverpool and Man City and even Chelsea the other day, they're playing really well at the moment and we'll be lucky and all this sort of stuff. That used to frustrate me. But with all that stuff, he's left us with some lasting memories. The half season during lockdown, for example, when he brought Jesse Lingard to the club, and we seemed to be almost unbeatable during that time. Some of the wins that we've had over the likes of Arsenal and Spurs, especially this season, which were just superb. That fantastic first season in Europe, with the games both home and away against Seville and Lyon, always stick in my mind. And how jubilant we felt, that season when, we did so well in the Europa League, we came so close, etc. But we didn't just quite pull it off. And then, of course, the semi-final against Alkmaar, where we made it to the final of the Europa Conference League. And, of course, the final itself, a magical, memorable night in Prague when we won the Europa Conference League. Now, I don't care what people say about that cup, Tin Pot Cup and all that stuff. I don't care. We won it. I was there. Many of us were there, either at the game or in Prague. It was a superb week of just a joyous time. And I won't forget all that, but unfortunately, the time has come for David Moyes to go. And, long live the king and all that sort of stuff. There's going to be the king is dead, long live the king, or the saying goes. I'm going to talk a little bit later on about Lopetegui, who apparently is, going to take over. I know it's not a done deal, but you can't get someone to sign a contract whilst we've got someone already in that role. And of course, David Moyes' contract doesn't run out until the end of June. I'm sure there'll be some agreement made where Lopetegui will come in a little bit sooner. But at the moment, it's a deal in principle, is what I understand. But I'm going to talk about Lopetegui in a moment, and see what he's going to have to offer. What's the difference between Moyes and Lopetegui? Because many people are already saying that he's the Spanish David Moyes. Many people are suggesting that Lopetegui is not going to do any good for us. It's not going to take us to the next level. But are we, there's a petition out already. There's a petition out because AC Milan fans did it. And so West Ham United fans decided to follow suit to try and not get Lopetegui to sign. Is that right? Are we doing this guy a disservice before a ball is kicked? Now, many people are looking at what he did at Wolves and saying, he's not worth having, etc. But, he did quite well at Wolves. He got them out of relegation. He's kind of stabilised them a little bit. And then, of course, he left under a dark cloud, because apparently he wasn't being helped in terms of transfers. He wasn't given a sizable budget to bring players in. And since Gary O'Neill took over, and Gary O'Neill has done reasonably well with the club. And I know there's a lot of people that wanted a younger manager, etc. Amorim and Arne Slot and all the names that were mentioned throughout the course of the last year or so. But there's nothing to suggest that they would do or have done any better than what Lopetegui might do. It's a hard one to know. It could be that Lopetegui's in for a couple of seasons, and then maybe we'll go for a younger manager. Who knows? But I'll talk about him in a moment. But before I do all that, of course, I can see the number of comments whizzing up. So let's go all the way to the top and say good evening to you all, because I'm sure you've all got an awful lot to say about what's happened. Good evening to you, Foxes. I hope you're well. Can't say I'm confident about the Lopetegui style and not really sure the board get it. It's going to be interesting. Good evening, Montana. How are you? One thing is for sure, if Sully Dithersall tries to force his signings onto Lopetegui, he will walk. Simple as that. I agree. Foxes, I've looked at his stuff and it's intriguing. Will he be less boring than David Moyes? I would say yes. And I'll explain why with some of the things that I've looked at about Lopetegui. I think I've pronounced his name right. You know what I'm like. I probably haven't. But I will talk about his style. And then you can make your minds up whether he's going to be a better option than David Moyes or not. And when it comes to you, Montana, no, I agree with you. But then that's why Tim Steidten's there. Stel, you need to introduce the StreamYard app at the very least. I need to vent my frustration against the Pick Me Sully. I will do, mate. I promise you I will. Well, it'll be a phone in like some of the other channels are doing. I'll have that stuff all ready and tested throughout the summer. Greed in principle, not over, Jack. Yes, good evening to you, mate. Good evening, Ian. How are you? I still about time. Let's hope fans get behind it. Well, I do. I mean, I put a comment up on Facebook earlier today saying, I hope we're not going to have a whole Lopetegui in, Lopetegui out scenario in the same way that we've had Moyes in, Moyes out. Let's give the guy a chance. Marios, good evening. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Don't worry, Marios. You stay there. Don't give up. Your spelling is absolutely fine. I'm liking the sound of that, Stella. Take. Rhonda and Tony, how are you? I hope you're well. What was the results when we played Wolves when Lopetegui was in charge? I wish I'd looked at that because I don't remember. I think they beat us. I think in one of the games they may have beaten us. Even to you, Debbie and Mark. I think Steidten is on board with Lopetegui being new head coach. Possession-based style of football incoming. Souček likely to be sold in the summer as not comfortable in possession passing in midfield. Don't disagree with that, to be honest with you, Mark. I think we should do well under Lopetegui, but the rebuild in the summer will be crucial to how his possession-based 4-3-3 tactics work. And it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Let me go back to that for a second. It's going to be interesting to see which of the players that we currently have in our squad might turn around and go, do you know what? I fancy a season of that. And how many might turn around and go, do you know what? That's not for me. I think what was mentioned a moment ago, Souček, I think will be a casualty under Lopetegui. I'm pretty certain he will be. I don't think Lopetegui will fancy that kind of footballer, that kind of midfielder at West Ham United. It's not his style. He uses very technically advanced, very technically based midfielders in his 4-3-3 formation. So I don't think someone like Souček will survive. But then maybe, and I think he'll go, but just in case, maybe someone like Paqueta might be far more comfortable in a Lopetegui system and may stay and may feel that he could do an awful lot better under different coaching. Tevis Pyatt, good evening to you. Evening, Stella and the people here. Best footballing news in 4.5 years. Glad not to see him on the touchline again. Shaky, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. I'm very well, mate. I hope you are too. CC, how are you, mate? Can't wait for next season without Moyes. Is it going to be better under Lopetegui? Palace doing a number. It was 2-0 at half time, wasn't it? Yep. Who else have we got here? Let's go down and say hello to other people. Adrian, not impressed by the Lopetegui link and can imagine the fan base to continue to be fractured next season. Will be a very short honeymoon period affording to him. It's a good point, Adrian. I hope you're wrong in that. I hope we do, because, I mean, you've got to think about it. We've got a massive rebuild coming up. And, I think we need 6 or 7 players at the very least in order to stand still, in order to just make, the first 11 better. And we might have to afford him a season, Lopetegui, to actually do that. Because maybe, just maybe, it might take a whole season for everything to be bedded in. Are we going to be patient enough? It's going to be interesting to see. Rowley, good evening to you. I wanted Amorim, but Lopetegui, Europa League and 3 ECL qualifications in a row with Seville. Not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. I'm with you on that. Absolutely. Trevor, good evening, mate. I think it's good that they have agreed terms now that West Ham normally leave it so late. I just hope him and Steidten start looking for new squad because half our players need to go. I think we're now going to start seeing a flurry of transfer stories where you're going to start seeing Steidten and Lopetegui linked to each one. It's not going to be just Steidten says this and Steidten says that. I think it's going to be and Lopetegui fancies him, especially if there's a whole load of Spanish players already suddenly being linked to us. But let's not forget, we've got another problem with the rebuild of the squad next season, because we have to get homegrowns in. Now, we could probably persuade Ben Johnson to stay. Maybe that might be one. We can maybe Ward-Prowse is likely to stay. I'm not sure if he'll be used as regularly. He might not like that, but as a sub, he might stay. I think Flynn Downs now relishes the opportunity to perhaps come back and be a backup for Alvarez. So there's a third one. Antonio, there's a question mark over him, whether he stays or not. I'm not too sure, but that could be 4. And Bowen, of course, will be another. So you've got about 5, maybe 6 players, homegrown players that could potentially be available. If that's the case, let's say it's 5 homegrown players, then we've got a lesser problem because we're only going to need 3. Those 3 could come from the under-21s. It could from the youth academy, or there'll be players that we might already have our eye on to make up the 25-man squad with 8 homegrown players in it. Mark, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. I think the fans could have stomached Moyes' boring low block tactics against the top 6 if he had a plan B against lesser clubs and attack from the start. I don't disagree. I did come to that conclusion myself. I mean, well, conclusion. I did finally give in to what other people were saying. I just was kind of like hoping that perhaps things would be different. And you do hope that. I remember at the beginning of the season when we said, right, clean sheet, we've won a trophy, etc., etc. Let's see where we go from here. And unfortunately, it didn't turn out to be much different to what we had before. Graham, I hope you're well. I'm grateful for the service that Moyes has given the club, but he is out of ideas now. A new perspective is badly needed. Good evening to you, Ralph. I hope you're well. Mark, with youth to possible slim chart. Don't know about that. I've got some interesting information about Lopetegui and the youth that he's had. Out, Stephen. Good evening. You got it there first. Frame it, mate. So in about 6 months' time, you can say, I said it first. Who else have we got? Ralph. Watching Palace playing some nice football at the moment with Glasner. Yeah, good. Pleased for him. He was an interesting one, Glasner. But anyway, let's move on. Garino, good evening, mate. I'll get Mike Bassett in. I hope you're well. Good evening to you, Sharky. How are you, mate? I hope you're well. Good evening to you, Ray. Good evening, Usual. Good evening, Vonnie. Good evening, Peter. Who else have we got? Juha. I hope you're well, mate. Oh, 3-0 now. Palace. Wow. Aaron, I hope you're well. Moyes gone. I'm nursing us. What you do in your spare time, mate, is really up to you. Or behind closed doors. Neil, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. Good evening, Howard. I hope you're well too. Andy, hello, mate. I hope you're well. Thank you for the thank you for the message on the show I did yesterday. Appreciate that. I get some really, really good comments, and I reply to every single one of them. That's how boring my life is sometimes, much to the dismay of the other half, where she goes, "Are you getting off your phone yet?" But Andy, your one was good. I get them from the likes of Bill, etc. Really detailed sort of messages on my videos, and I appreciate them. It makes me think. Good evening, Ray. I hope you're well, mates. How are you? And there's Bill as well. Good evening, Bill. I hope you're well. Just woken and heard the news and counterclaim. No counterclaims. Well, definitely not about Moyes. Moyes is definitely going. But when it comes to Lopetegui, people are saying it's not a done deal. No, it's not. It's not a done deal. It's in principle, because at this moment in time, David Moyes is in post. So once David Moyes, now that it's been announced, I think you'll see it all being a bit, I don't think they'll wait until David Moyes' contract ends at the end of June. I think the last game of the season, and then you'll find, like, by mutual consent, we've now cut the deal short. They'll pay him the last month. Of course they will. Stu, not Stu, good evening to you. Today's news has made my long weekend. Can't wait for him to go. Paul, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Good evening to you, Philip. Agony over season tickets now renewed. Well, that's going to be interesting, isn't it? Let's see now whether people are really up for Lopetegui and whether they're going to start renewing their season tickets as well. Good point. Infamy, good evening, mate. How are you? Man United is trash. Well, I wonder how much longer Ten Hag will be there. Yeah, and he was meant to be a ray of hope for them. Funny how things turn out, eh? Who else we've got? William, how are you, mate? Thank you for joining. Andy, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Time for a new start and hopefully more enjoyable football, whoever we get in. Absolutely. Well, it's going to be different. Without a shadow of a doubt, it's going to be different. Good evening to you, James, and good evening to you, Gary. I hope you're both well. Daniela, now the outer can chill out. Now the outers can chill out and say thank you to Moyes. Look, I really do hope we do say a proper thank you to David Moyes. Doesn't matter what you think, about the style of football, etc. He has brought us success. Whether people like to hear it or not is fact. I really would like, whatever happens against Luton, that the season's over. We're not going to qualify for Europe. Yes, we're playing for pride. But I really do hope that this coming weekend, fans actually really do give him a warm round of applause. I do. Will there be some? I'm worried that there may be some fans that might boo him. I think that'd be out of order, but then I guess each to their own. Good evening, Hammerettes. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Well, thank you for joining. He says to the mods. Chris, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. 2024 has been horrific in more ways than one, mate. Good evening to you, Stephen. I hope you're well. Thank God he's gone. Welcome, Loopy Lou. Decanio, Loopy Lou. Decanio, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. At least all the personal abuse of manager on YouTube can now end. Do you really think so, mate? Do you really think so? It's only got to take for Lopetegui to Lopetegui. It is Lopetegui. It's only got to take him, to lose a couple of games, and all of a sudden it's going to start again, isn't it? So I hope not. Glenn, good evening to you. Thanks for joining, mate. David Sullivan's a pain in the arse at West Ham. He is indeed. I won't deny that. I think the way he's handled this has been quite unprofessional. But like I said at the start of the show, you know, we had to do something. We had to do due diligence. I think all this stuff about let's wait and see. I think that's the thing that pissed everybody off, to be quite honest with you. Maybe at the beginning of the season, I kind of said in a previous show last week that I think maybe Sullivan had the plans to let Moyes go at the end of last summer. But then all of a sudden he goes and wins a European a trophy, and Sullivan must have been thinking, shit, what do I do now? I think what Sullivan should have done, could have done, may have done differently is sit down with Moyes and say at the end of last season, it's been a phenomenal, great season. Look, I want to let you see out the rest of the of your contract, but it will be the end after that. And then at least they would have known, everyone would have known that, you know, come the end of this season, Moyes was going to go. But to actually string it on, and then we heard the news about, oh, there's a contract on the table and all that sort of stuff. And the board did want Moyes to stay. You know, they were much in favour of Moyes. And you think about the manager that they've now, the manager that we look like we're going to get to replace David Moyes. I did say Sullivan is going to want someone who's got some kind of Premier League experience. Lopetegui has that. Someone who's got a bit of kudos. Lopetegui has that. I've been winning trophies, etc. You know, so that's Sullivan's sort of mantra. I want someone that's a bit of a name, and I want someone that has got some level of Premier League experience. Bang, Lopetegui. Now, look, I did say, and it does worry me, but I will try and put some positives on this. But it does worry me that Lopetegui does feel to me, or certainly did a few weeks back, that he's a bit of a Pellegrini type signing. Has he seen his better days? Have they gone past him? You know, is he doing this just for the money? You know, what's he going to bring? Now, there was a long article that he did the other day that I read, and he was talking about football. He was talking about his technical approach and all that sort of stuff, his hunger for, you know, what he wants from football, that he sits down and watches reels and reels of football. Apparently, without naming the club, he said, you know, when a team in the Premier League approached me, I started to watch more and more of their games to understand their current technique, etc., what I could do differently. Clearly, that was about West Ham United. So that made me think, well, hang on a minute. Maybe it's not going to be a bit of a duff deal if Lopetegui comes. So I'm looking forward to see what he can offer, but it'll be interesting to see if it actually happens. Bill, any manager at a club after so many huge defeats would have been dismissed. It's only his contract and remaining games that the announcement of this has been made. Yeah, good point, Barry. Even what a result today, he is going, but Loopy deal is not signed, sealed, and delivered yet. No, it's not. And as I explained, all because we've still got someone incumbent in that role. Hammerett, I've been researching him for a bit, Lopetegui, and have found quite a few qualities that are decent. He has been known to develop youth players, gave Ruben Neves a first-team spot when he was only 17. I'm telling you, people, it might not be quite as bad as you might think. Are we going to get the sort of football that we want? I don't know. We'll see. Christine, good evening to you. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. James, Moyes in-game management, I won't miss at all. Yeah, it's something I'm going to talk about with Lopetegui. Have I said it? I have pronounced it right. I'm sure I have. Happy Hammer. So disappointed and frustrated, feeling deflated. Why, Happy Hammer? Tell us why. Give us a bit more information on that. Infamy. Anyone know of a good shop online with international shipping for retro West Ham kits? I have got some. You're going to have to email me because I haven't got them off the top of my head. But you send me an email and on westhamvoice@gmail.com and I'll give you some names. Scuds, good evening to you. What's the difference between head coach and manager? Don't get it. Well, manager, the old-fashioned type manager, basically manages everything about the football, transfers and style of play, etc., etc., etc. Whereas head coach is just going to focus on the coaching. Focus on the coaching, let the technical director do all the transfers and so on and so forth. That's roughly the difference. Steve, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Mr. McCarthy, how are you? Did you all see this fella smiling and laughing after we... Yeah, well, you know, I was in a pub and you would have been smiling and laughing as well. I hope you're well, John. Hammerett also brought up Torres from the youth setup. Doesn't stick with the same tried and tested players. If you perform well, then you get your chance. All right. Do you want to come this side of the of the camera? Hammerett, Garino. Some good performances surrounded by some poor ones. No doubt he has helped stabilise and push on, and with better support from Sullivan, may have achieved more, but time will tell. But time to move on, sorry. Well, I think he was supported, to be quite honest with you. I think the frustration that I saw in the January window was the frustration that we all saw 2 years ago. It was a David Moyes trait. He talked about, he went out and spent the money in the summer windows, absolutely. But I think my understanding still is that we had something like £40 million available in January, and Moyes was saying, I don't want anyone. So, good evening, Lee. I hope you're well. Simon67, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Hope he brings on our youth players through. Yeah, if they're good enough. I think Amaret just said he brought several young players through in his time at other clubs. So I think he will. Nice aardvark. Good evening to you. I hope you're well. Good evening to you, Black Country. How are you, mates? Not happy with Sullivan. All on the cheap again. Oh, well, I still support the club. Well, it won't be on the cheap, will it? Because it's not only Lopetegui come in at, I don't know, £3-4 million a year, but then however many backroom staff. It's going to be interesting which backroom staff he's likely to bring, because when he went to Wolves, he took an entourage with him. But he did say in this same interview that I read the other day that he'll only bring people in that are kind of needed. So I don't know. Will he keep any? Will he keep Heitinger? Will he keep Nolan? Will he keep anyone? The physios and all that sort of stuff. It's going to be interesting to see. So I can understand why you're saying it looks to be cheap, but then the Amorim thing. Let's talk about Amorim just for a second. And I know people are upset that Sullivan wouldn't pay the £15 million release clause or however much it is. But you've got to think about it this way. Amorim would have come with an entourage as well. Amorim wanted anything between £8 to £10 million a year as a manager. Would he get that elsewhere? I'm not so sure. So the salary, the buyout clause, the entourage that will come with him. What if it didn't work? What if halfway through the season or at the end of the season or whatever, it didn't work and Amorim came in on, say, a 3-year contract? That's going to be quite a sizable amount of money to pay him off and his backroom staff if it didn't work. So there's a balance to be made here. I get why some fans, and I'm not just saying you, Black Country, but in general, I get why some fans are saying, come on, Sully, pay up and all that, get the best in and so on. But if Amorim didn't work and then we had that huge bill to pay at the, to have to pay him out of his contract, would that have been worth it when we could perhaps spend money on players? Now, I'm not saying that for me, Lopetegui is the ideal replacement to David Moyes. I'm not suggesting that. But yes, he will be cheaper because he's not currently in work. But just maybe sometimes we have to look at it a bit broader. It's not just the manager's wages or the head coach's wages that have got to be paid out. There's a lot of stuff to be paid beyond that as well. Gary, Moyes deserves respect and Loopy deserves a chance. Absolutely, on both counts. John, I want to know who Nick Killington heard was the next manager. Is Loopy in for a shock? I don't know what Nick heard. You tell me. Garino, we hit a ceiling with Moyes, partly due to Sullivan, partly due to Moyes. Paul Evans, imagine what we could have done with a good manager. Well, imagine where we might have been without Moyes. I don't know. You see both sides of it. Or I do. Cockney, good evening to you. Meeting you, boss. Same as the old boss. Is he, though? I'm not so sure. Bedfordshire, good evening, mate. I hope you're well. Do forgive me. I can't read out all your comments, so I'll try and catch up so I can get on with the rest of the show. James, I hope you're well. I'm buzzing. Look forward to a refresh. Garino, give him a decent send-off, then get behind the new man until all goes pear-shaped, as it will with Sullivan. That's the spirit. Sharky, whoever the next person is in charge, they deserve the chance to show what they can do. James H, good evening to you. I'm glad we're getting a change in manager. It's been like sucking a lemon, expecting lemonade lately. Well, you suck hard enough. Well, that didn't sound right, did it? You will get lemonade. Got to be careful what I say. Howard, Loppy can sign today. Moyes is a manager. Loppy comes in as head coach. Loppy is out of contract, can sign a pre-contract agreement. He can indeed. That's a good point. Anthos, having a party in Cyprus next time you're out. I don't know when we're coming out, mate. I don't know when we're coming out, but I hope it's soon. We need a holiday. I've been talking to the other half about getting away soon. Happy Hammer. Hopefully Loppy and Tim will be working in the background with transfer targets. 4-0. Fucking hell. There you go. Garino. Would be the most the most West Ham thing ever now to win our last 2 matches and overtake Man United and still not get into Europe. Imagine that. Steve, I will believe who the new head coach is when I see him on the pitch, holding him up half and half scarf. Richard, is the fat lady singing? Has he definitely signed? Not yet. Like I said, it's an agreement in principle with Lopetegui, and I don't think, unless something really drastic happens, I can't see this not happening. I think the reason why I'm pretty confident that it will be Lopetegui is otherwise West Ham would not have announced David Moyes leaving today. I think they would have tried. I think they were going to get the Lopetegui deal under wraps first before David Moyes was announced to be going. Hammer it. We could finish 7th mathematically. I just need the Manx to lose their last games, plus the Rent Boys losing their 2, and us smashing ours. Yeah, we said that about a month ago, and that's still not materialised. George, good evening to you. I'm delighted that Moyes is gone. Lopetegui is not confirmed. We may still get Amorim. Dream on. We will not get Amorim. Espen, I love it, but I don't think it will. I really don't think it will happen. Espen, Lopetegui for 2 or 3 seasons, then would be ready to take over after gaining more experience in the Championship. Apparently, he's going to Sunderland, if I'm correct, and I wish him well. But I've got to be honest. When you finish mid-table in the French league, I don't know how good a coach you really are. But yeah, I think if it is the Sunderland deal that he's going to get, I hope he does well. I really do. Robert, let's face it. If we got the only head coach that was willing to come to us and filled some of our, let's face it, we got the only head coach that was willing to come to us and filled some of our requirements. Maybe he'll fill more than you think. John, Lopetegui has to buy a new squad. Do you really believe that Sully is going to pay for it? He will have kittens. Well, we've spent money. I find that a bit weird because we've spent money. Under Pellegrini, we spent money. Under Moyes, everyone's complaining that we spent $500 million under Moyes, $500 million, and we've only got a squad full of 30-year-olds, which is true. But we have spent money, and I think we will spend money this summer. And the one thing that we know about Lopetegui is that the reason why he left Wolves is because he wasn't backed in the transfer window. There was no money for him to have. So I think we will spend money. Look, are we going to go out and buy 50, 60 million pound players? Probably not. I don't know. But I think we will spend money, even if we sell the likes of Paqueta. I think Paqueta and Agurd are the 2 likely big so-called names that are going to go. And I know everyone's saying, oh my God, Kudus is going because of the release clause. Watch my video from last week about that, because that release clause still is not clear whether it's a release clause for this summer. And my understanding is that it's not. So we may sell. But I think we still make money. Likes of Ben Rama are going. Likes of Kera are probably going to go. A few other players, there'll be a 5 million here, a 10 million here, a 15 million here, and so on and so forth. And like I said earlier, there was about 40 million apparently available in the January transfer window. And if we do sell Paqueta, will we get 85 million for him? I know that's what's in the release clause, but even if we get 65 for Paqueta, that will go towards transfers. We will have money to spend. I'm pretty certain of it. Let's see. We won 2-0 at home, I believe, last season. Did we win one and lose one against them? I think we may have done. Stowe Irons, good evening to you. I hope you're well. We are where we are. At least we have clarity at long last. Give the man a chance. Absolutely. We've got to give Lopetegui a chance to see what he's capable of doing. And I'm not holding much, okay, Wolves was Wolves, and it was all right, mid-table, etc. He did get him out of, from the relegation zone. But I'm looking at the Lopetegui from the Seville days, etc. And previous to that, he's had some decent successes. He's a steady manager, a pretty decent manager. Robin, good evening to you, mate. Happy to see the back of Moyes. Hope Downs comes back. I hope Downs comes back as well, to be honest with you. Chris, Lopetegui to bring back Craig Dawson. That would be interesting. Paul, he wants players who can pass the ball. Well, we have players who can pass the ball. And I dare say we'll have players that will bring in, that will want to pass the ball even more. James, hope he takes the captain's armband from Zuma and moves him out of the club. That will be a high possibility, because I can't see Lopetegui wanting to keep someone like Zuma. Who is it that they said, oh, bring back Craig Dawson? I think Craig Dawson's a better defender than Kurt Zuma at the moment. Do you think Flynn Downs will be part of the new manager's plans? I'm hoping so. And it's going to be interesting for the players that are out on loan, Victor. Flynn Downs out on loan, even Ben Rama out on loan. And who else? We've got Kera out on loan. And we've had some of the youngsters out on loan as well. His name's gone. But we've had a couple of academy players out on loan who have done pretty well as well. So I think everyone, it's a clean slate. I think Lopetegui would have a look at the players who are currently in the squad. I think he'll have a look at the players that are out on loan or have been out on loan and make a decision on them, or maybe spend the summer trying to determine whether he thinks that they're worth having in the squad. It's going to be interesting. Kaiser, good evening to you. Good evening, good evening, David. I hope you're well. Who else have we got here? John. So what I thought was funny, Moyes is always going on about what he achieved, 3 years in Europe, etc. Then when asked why we keep conceding goals, he blamed, fuck me. That was a what moment. It was like, come on, mate. I mean, where are you going with this? Yeah, do you remember at the beginning of the season when we were, patting ourselves on the back for the fantastic transfer window that we had? How we spent that money, that Declan Rice money, so well in bringing in James Ward-Prowse, Alvarez, Kudus, Mavropanos, etc. We were going, wow, isn't this great? Great, Alvarez. What a player we were saying. What a player, and he was the bit in the jigsaw piece that was missing, the player in the middle of the park that was going to solidify us. And at some point, even I was saying, fuck me, he's better than Declan Rice was, in terms of what we needed. We needed someone that was a defensive-minded midfielder. So for David Moyes to have come out and after the game against Chelsea and say, oh, well, yeah, we lost because we ain't got Declan Rice, it's like, what a kick in the face that was to Alvarez. Anyway, Arrived 66. Good evening to you. I think Souček will go with Moyes to his new club, but not sure he will want to play in League One. Vinay, good evening, mate. Moyes did really well during lockdown. After that, it was disappointing in the league and the transfer market, but good in Europe. Let's see what Loppy does. God, I'm so far behind. I've not even started the show properly yet. Matt Rainey, good evening to you. I hope you're well. No, don't be sorry about being late, mate. You're all good. I missed a good bit. Hope you're well. I'm very well, mate. Thank you for joining. Scuds, good evening to you. With the Euros in the summer transfer transfer room is going to be mental, aren't they? Just Scuds. I mean, they're mental anyway. They're going to be more mental during the summer transfer, during the Euros. And the other thing is, there's a lot of players that are going to be in the Euros that are going to go, wait and see. If I'm good enough, I'll go to a bigger club or I'll go for more money, etc. So it's going to be a tricky one, to be honest with you. Freddie Potts is the name I was thinking of. I'd like to see Freddie Potts get a run in the first team. I don't think Freddie Potts will get a run in the first team. If you're looking for a defensive-minded midfielder with Alvarez there already, I reckon it's going to be Flynn Downs as a backup. But Freddie, I can see him maybe going out on loan again next season to a championship team. And if he does what Flynn Downs has done with Southampton, then he'll be more than ready. Brian, good evening to you, mate. Bye, David. Thanks for the memories, but time is right for a change. Good evening, Kevin. I hope you're well, mate. Thanks for joining. Garino, rumours going around that we have deals in place with some championship players. Hackney at Middlesbrough, Greaves at Hull, O'Hare at Ipswich being named. I've read all this, but I deliberately don't do any transfer window stories until the transfer window opens or until we're near it. Because right now, even up until today, we still don't really know, although we kind of feel it's going to be Lopetegui, we still don't know who the manager is going to be and what he wants. So all these rumours, unless, of course, as I said, Steidten and Lopetegui have been talking about transfers, and maybe that's why these names have been identified. Who knows? Andy, Pablo scored for Beditz. Forget, he's gone in. He's gone. Scamacca earlier, he's gone. Benny has scored tonight. What did they have in common? Moyes binned them off. Well, let's be honest. I felt sorry for Pablo, to be honest with you. I didn't think Scamacca, to be really honest, he hasn't done exceptionally well back in Italy. It's taken him a while, But I don't know. And Ben Rama, we were all slating him because he blew hot and cold. I don't care. Look, Ben Rama is the only one that could possibly come back. So let's see if Lopetegui wants him or not. Let's scroll down. Andrew, I will get behind Lopetegui, but I'm not happy that Sullivan hasn't allowed Steidten to pick the manager. Well, we don't know this. And I'm going to talk about that later on as well. Instead of listening to Salthouse advice and gone with Lopetegui, needs to hit the ground running. I know it's come from Salthouse. We're all aware of that. But I'll get to it in a minute. Good evening, Glenn. How are you, mate? Great news now. Maybe us fans can start getting along again and back the new boss, whoever he may be. What chances do you think of that, Glenn? In all honesty, I'm not asking that facetiously, but what chances do you think of that? Do you think that a couple of bad games in and all of a sudden the fan base is going to be divided again? I really hope not. Daniel, good evening, mate. Has Lopetegui been a head coach before? Was he a manager at Wolves? He's been head coach at many clubs before. And so I think maybe he might have been manager at Wolves. I don't know his title, but certainly abroad at Seville and other clubs, etc. He was head coach. James, actually, Garino, what about Benny? He could come back. Could Stephen? As long as he can manage a bigger squad and doesn't flog the same 11 to death, he will be better. Absolutely agreed. Adrian. Reflects very badly on how we go about our business, that we can go from wanting Amorim, then move on to Lopetegui. Night and day choices. They are very different. Absolutely very different. But let's be honest, I think what the West Ham board or Sullivan was doing along with Steidten is looking at potential alternatives. Amorim was one. You'd be foolish not to have 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 head coaches, managers that you want to look at. You'd be foolish not to have them. It'd be silly to just stick onto one person and hope to God that they want to sign with you. But in it, admittedly, they are quite different. It's interesting that some of the other managers, Hansi Flick, that was mentioned, God knows who else, various managers, they're all very, very different to each other. Who else have we got here? Good evening, Apache. I hope you're well. Good evening, old man. How are you? Thank you for joining, mate. I hope you're well. Bino, Moyes has a contract in principle with Clanton Bruce for 1 season. After that, he expects to return. Imagine him being on that show. Gaz, good evening, mate. Good evening, Garino. And as long as Tim has control over players in, I don't mind Loopy if it's true that he's the man. Good point. And I think that's what will happen. I think Steidten is going to have it. Steidten is finally going to get his project off the ground. I was saying earlier that when I think potentially West Ham, Sullivan would have wanted David Moyes to go at the end of last season, but winning a trophy kind of scuppered that. And then the whole project that Steidten's working on was delayed for a season. Now, with Steidten and potentially Lopetegui coming in, it looks like Steidten's project will hit the ground running. Andy, Ralph, even Lazio are about to sell Anderson to Juventus, making a £30 million profit. Haller would have been the only one I would have kept, to be quite honest with you. Infamy. This summer transfer window might be hectic with the Euros unless our targets are players not playing in the Euros. Good point. Will, J-Lo has been Spain and Real Madrid manager, and now he's coming to the mighty Hammers. This is why I kind of questioned whether his time has passed or not. I hope this is not another Pellegrini-style signing. I really do. Oh, man, Lopetegui will bring a different approach, which nobody can deny we needed. The season was repeated again, and he didn't change. Small squad, no striker, as we all know. Forgive me, I'm going to skip a few to try and catch up. Vonnie. Stephen Warnock already hoping we're going to fail by saying Lopetegui is really boring. But if that's what they want, obviously not watched us recently. Yeah, it's interesting what other pundits say, isn't it, all of a sudden? Adrian, really uncomfortable that there is another Sullivan Salthouse stitch-up. Or as soon as I heard of the agent involved, just feel doom and gloom. And I think this is why we quite a few fans have become negative, because straight away it's like, well, it's Salthouse, it ain't going to be right for us, etc., etc. Let's see. Vinay. Lopetegui wants that job. That's a positive. Amorim might think he's too good for West Ham. What a good point. And other people have actually suggested since, but what's to say Amorim might want to stay? Amorim might have agreed to a deal. And then if he did reasonably well, and all of a sudden other teams started sniffing, I don't know, Chelsea or Liverpool or whoever else, what's to say he wouldn't have jumped ship? I think it's a really good point, to be quite honest with you, Vinay. Mercedes, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. New manager has a huge rebuild to make. Moyes allowed the squad to age. Absolutely did. Mark, good evening, mates. Don't normally make your show live because I'm either in Cyprus or Saudi. Are you coming over to Paralimni anytime soon? I am. Well, I just said I will try. When we finalise that we're going to go, we've all got to meet up. You just I'll let you guys know, and you tell me if you're out there. Be a nice little. I'm fancy doing a West Ham Cypriot group. Because I think there's more Cypriot hammers or those who have got a connection to Cyprus than I thought. I think it'd be quite good. Hammer it. Sorry, Stel, I've been researching him for hours after how pissed off I was this morning. See, I hope you're feeling better now, Hammer. Montana. We shall have a greater summer window now, and next season I see us building a great team. Hope our academy shall start channeling through the gems now as well. Will, you have to be utterly delusional to think that Sullivan would have gone for a manager without Premier League experience and then pay a huge buyout fee. You're spot on, Will. And I said that last week in the show. You're absolutely spot on. As much as what we think is right, Sullivan will go, well, this is what I want. This is the criteria. Premier League experience, someone with a good pedigree, a good background, etc., and someone who's cheaper than paying a 10, 12, 15 million pound get out clause. Neil, Moyes refused to use youth and ground the current squad into the ground. Obsidian, you're right, unfortunately. Obsidian. But then the youth have got to be right. They've got to be good enough. Obsidian, him wanting the job isn't a positive when he's out of work. Of course he wants a job, especially with Premier League wages. Well, apparently his wages, surprisingly, are going to be around about 3 million, 3.5, 4 million pound a year. It's actually no more than what David Moyes is on, which I find surprising. I thought maybe I was led to believe that Lopetegui would have wanted a massive salary. Garino, still disagree with January window. Everything points to Sullivan withholding money like it did with Sam and Pellegrini. I don't know, mate, because we could have got players on loan. Moyes didn't even want players on loan. All right, if you don't want to buy players, no problem at all. We got Calvin Phillips on loan. We could have actually, just to sort of beef up the numbers, we could have got one or two other players on loan as well. Or we didn't even have to let both Fornals and Ben Rama leave at the same time. Chris, Moyes lost his job in January transfer window. Gaz, Tim will get some exciting players in for sure. I think so. Corky, and he has done already, hasn't he? Corky, another thing with Loppy still is that Sully doesn't have to buy him out of a contract. Absolutely. Crazy if that's a consideration and a better coach can be found. Well, I think we've got carried away. I'm not saying it's wrong to get carried away with wanting Ruben Amorim. Look, one of the finest young coaches in Europe at the moment, up and coming, etc. But let's be brutally honest. He's not done anything outside. I mean, he's only done Portugal and he's done exceptionally well there. And we keep saying that the Premier League is the best league in the world. So we don't know if we would have been as successful here as he has been in Portugal. Maybe, his stock will rise. If he does move on, he's staying with Sporting another season. Maybe his stock will rise if he moves on in Europe and does it, I don't know, in Spain or in the Bundesliga, or maybe here in the Premier League. And then we can see how good enough he is. Stephen, be interesting to see how much money he has to spend. Garina, I worked it out that he could have about 170, 180 million with the sales, etc., that we could potentially make. Garino, Sullivan will spend the money this summer when the new manager comes in, then close his wallet in a year. Seen it too many times under many different managers. John, imagine next January, Loopy wants players in the window and Sully says, sorry, we're skint, sell to buy. Well, that would, let's see what happens. Yeah, good point. Let's see what happens. Obsidian, will he keep the back room? Will he keep the players? Will he keep the fans awake? Richard, yes, Lopetegui is a member of the International Goalkeepers Union. That doesn't, some of our best coaches around have been either goalies or defenders. So it doesn't always mean that you're going to be a boring defensive-minded manager just because you've been a goalie. Stephen, maybe he didn't spend in January because he knew who was going. Good point as well. Let's scroll down. Who else have we got? How far am I? I'm going to catch up with these comments and then we're going to go into the next part of the show. Glenn, we ain't even announced who the new boss is, and straight away there's negativity. Moyes is going, rejoice, and back whoever comes in. Very good point. Delton, good evening, mate. I hope you're all well. Moyes failed to prepare, so he prepared to fail for this season. Good point. Good point. Alex, anyone is better than David Moyes? Well, let's hope. Adrian, Amorim or Lupsi is a false choice. There are plenty of other managers that wouldn't cost anything that would have chosen ahead of Loppy. Good point, Corky. But do we need to get behind whoever is the new coach and give them a few transfer windows to get the transfers and the style right? I think we need about at least half a dozen players, which you can get in one window. But I think you've got a good point, Corky. I think it might take a couple of transfer windows before Lopetegui gets what he believes will be his own squad. Of course, there'll be players that he'll look at West Ham and go, I want to keep him, I want to keep him, I want to keep him, and then build on that. Montana. Neil, I hope he gets the job too. I prefer Fonseca. It's interesting. I've got a story about Fonseca. Let me tell you a story about Fonseca. Apparently, he is represented by Silkman, Mr. Barry Silkman, who happens to be another good friend of David Sullivan. And apparently, the rumor is that he hasn't been able to get David Sullivan to speak to that coach, Fonseca. So there is this story that Salthouse has got a deal arranged with Sullivan for Lopetegui, but the other agent, Mr. Silkman, hasn't been able to get Fonseca in front of David Sullivan. It's quite interesting, that, isn't it? I wonder why. Will, obviously United will be rushing to get Moyes signed up again. Andrew, needed to trust Tim like Leverkusen did. Just look at what Leverkusen are doing. That's all down to Tim. I think Sully will regret not listening to Tim's advice. We don't know. My understanding is that Steidten is behind this deal. I'll get to it. I said I'll get to it. I promise you I will. You've got to hang with me. Bernie, still hope I'm very good, mate. All good. The fact is we cannot go on like we have. We need new players and new ideas to take us on. It's been dreadful since Christmas, and I can't disagree. E. Davis, positivity now. He's a better manager. He's also a madman. So be entertaining. Christine, new manager needs at least a year. I don't disagree with that, to be quite honest with you. Mike D, I don't know if he's gone to Sunderland. There was a rumor about him potentially going to a championship team, and I think Sunderland was one that was mentioned. Mike D, a lot of people are on tonight with only a few likes. Still, much appreciated. I'll take this opportunity to say, if you're new to the channel, please do hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you a penny to do so. Please also hit the like button. Thank you, Mike, for reminding me. And also, there's a bell there. Hit that bell notification to let you know when I'm next on to bore you to tears with all the stuff I talk about. Ray, Lopetegui wants Moyes as his number 2. Imagine that. David, can you stay as my number 2? No. William, is that why Crazy got offered a new contract? As he wanted him, Dawson and Big Mickey to Wolves? Good question. I actually don't know, but that's really that's a good question. Yeah. Infamy. We definitely needed a younger 25-man squad next season. A good mix of our youth players and 2 to 4 transfers will do us good. Yeah, but the interesting thing is you don't have to sign your under-21s, if they're still under 21, into your senior squad. You can still use them, but then keep places free to bring other players in. So you can still use them, but you don't have to sign them into the 25-man squad. Dexter. Even if I'm very well, the inevitable has happened, and rightly so, with an announcement before the last 2 games. Gives us the chance to give Moyes a good send-off. Hope the players do too. Yeah, I agree. I mentioned that earlier on, mate. I really do. Hustle. Release clause is not for this summer. I didn't think it was, and I did say that last week about Kudus. It's not this summer. So stop worrying. Kudus ain't going. Paqueta might. I think Agurd probably will. In terms of the bigger names, I think Zuma, could be on his last. Well, he is on his last legs, unfortunately. I think 1 or 2. I think Soucek will go. I don't think he'll be a Lopetegui style player. I don't think Soufal will not be a Lopetegui. There'll be a few players going, but I don't think Kudus is going to be one of them. Agreed. GJ, when I found out Moyes was leaving, I started producing. Oh dear, Richard. Anybody know a goalkeeper who's become a successful manager in the Premier League? Maybe not the Premier League, but I'm sure in other leagues. I'm trying to rack my brain. There's an Italian that I can't remember the name of. I'm pretty sure he was a goalie. Apache, come on, people, help me out. A successful manager who used to be a goalie. Apache, Julen Lopetegui. Claren Buami is a fucking mouth. Yeah, I can't even say his name, let alone the whole thing. Dexter, Lopetegui isn't a manager to write home about, for sure. However, he does come with a good pedigree with Seville and Real Madrid. What's your initial thoughts? Can a longer-term project be built with him? I think certainly for the next couple of seasons, it's not necessarily a bad choice. And I'm going to explain why when I get through these comments. Jesus, people, stop writing just for 5 minutes. Stop writing so I can catch up. Hustle. I hope we can buy players that can find a balance in patching up the low block crap that has caused the self-conceded goals by and large and snatches by the opposition. I know I didn't do that justice, but I know what you meant. Trevor, Bone as a captain and Zuma needs to get new caps. Get rid of him. Garina, Julen Lopetegui, Blue Spanish Moyes already has his own theme tune. Montana, all those Muppets saying be careful what you wish for and all this nonsense. Have they watched Palace play? They're absolutely dismantling this Ten Hag shambles. But it is Man United, to be quite honest with you, isn't it? Alvarez should be captain. I wouldn't be against Alvarez being captain, to be quite honest with you. Andy, with it being likely, it's Lopetegui. Alvarez next captain. Care of Spanish connection. Mexican speech. Yeah, good shout. Good shout. What about Irvin in Austria? Will he come down? That's interesting because he was interviewed recently, wasn't he? This is a player that we bought. I can't remember what club in Austria, but it's a player that we bought in the summer. Then he was loaned straight back out to the Austrian team. I've been told that he's not going to come to West Ham. We're going to end up selling him in the summer. I don't know. It's all a bit odd when things like that happen. Montana, E. Davis, the irony of that comment is that Moyes never rated Rice in the first instance and yet acts as if he's Zidane. Dinosaurs like ready-made food. Jack Bell, have to look at full track record. Real Madrid, Spain and Porto didn't go well. Most Wolves fans don't seem enamored by him. Did well with Seville to start with, though. Still, we'll get behind him. Absolutely, we have to. Dexter, like I was at the bridge yesterday to watch that debacle. Zuma doesn't seem captain material moving forward. Would you have revised thought on giving the captaincy? Look, I agree. I didn't think Zuma. I never thought Zuma would have been captain material, to be quite honest with you. And I think it was a mistake to give the captaincy to him. Garino, playing devil's advocate, but maybe Moyes' Rice comment was a dig at the board for not showing enough ambition in the transfer window to keep him. I disagree with at the ambition. I think we spent the money really, really well, to be quite honest with you. Like I said earlier in the show, we ended up buying 4 players, for just over the money that we got for Declan Rice. And I think we were cock-a-hoop with the players that we got in. Kudus, Alvarez, James Ward-Prowse, people were a bit hot and cold over him, but Alvarez and Kudus, absolutely. And Mavropanos, I think, will come good. I think he's got getting better, to be honest. Keith, good evening to you. He didn't blame Rice. In fact, the total opposite. He said that if we still had Rice, we'd have better leadership and conceded less goals. He was slagging Zuma and Alvarez off. I don't know why he was slagging Alvarez off. Apparently, but I don't know, it's not corroborated. Apparently, there was an argument between the two of them, which is why Alvarez was taken off at halftime. But Alvarez, he's been dynamite for us this season. All right, he picks up yellow cards and all that sort of stuff. But without him, God knows how many more games we would have lost. David, look at the difference in Palace since they got rid of their dinosaur. We have Pellegrini again. This is my fear, David, that Lopetegui could be another Pellegrini type signing. I hope not. If Amorim was appointed, Jonathan, and most, if not all, fans agree, Tim Steidten are a good thing for the club. This will keep the fans united despite results. But Lopetegui represents what we all don't like from Sully. My understanding is that Steidten is behind this, and time will tell, I guess, because if Steidten doesn't hang around, then it's proof that he wasn't behind it. Montana, you know what? All these rival fans are jealous of our success. Do you remember 21-22? They were all hating on us. Now we look shaky. They're trying to remind us of the conference trophy. Right, you know what? I am going to stop there because I want to get into other parts of the show. I'll do it very, very briefly. And I'll tell you, this will be as brief as it possibly can be. The game against Chelsea. Starting lineup was the same against Liverpool the weekend before last. But of course, very different outcome. I wasn't expecting anything from the Chelsea game, to be quite honest with you. and we got nothing. Our result, the result was really, really poor. Another 5-0 drubbing. Another second away game in a row where we conceded 5 goals. And we've now conceded 70 goals in all this season alone. And that's matching what we conceded with Avram Grant in the season that we got relegated. Our second half of the season performance has been relegation fodder, really. You know, it's great that we had a good first half of the season. Otherwise, goodness knows where we would currently be. Chelsea made the game look really easy. They didn't have to come out of second gear. They were passing the ball around with ease. They were just ripping us apart. We were disheveled. We did look disheveled, you know. And then when the goals came, goodness me, I mean, it was like, what is going on here? The first goal, we didn't clear it in the 18-yard box, and it fell to Cole Palmer. The second goal, much the same. I think it was Zuma that just whacked it up, and it fell to Gallagher. And then the third goal, I think Silva headed it across from a corner, and I don't know who scored their third goal, but he was unmarked as well. It was like, what is going on? 3-0 by half time, by half an hour. Second half, as I just mentioned, he took Alvarez off. And David Moyes seemed to suggest, didn't he? Seemed to suggest with the comments that he made that Alvarez was the one at fault for us conceding 3 goals in the first half. And then, without him, we conceded another 2 in the second half. So clearly that wasn't correct. And we've already mentioned it. When he talked about missing Declan Rice, it seemed to be a direct dig at Alvarez and suggesting that he wasn't doing his job properly. I don't know. I think Alvarez, as I've said, has been a superb signing. And if Alvarez is out of position most of the time, it's because he's trying to cover for the rest of the midfield. You know, Paqueta, you know, not bothering, and Souček not being capable. When Moyes also suggested that the team have no mental strength, lacking in leadership, no mental toughness, then I ask myself this. This is David Moyes' squad. This is what David Moyes has built. So is it in his guys? You know, he's talking about lack of this, lack of that, etc. This is his team. You know, so he can only go look at himself in the mirror and go, this is what I've created. Moyes also said that perhaps we didn't have the balance. This is the bit that really got me, because when it comes to playing against Luton and Man City, we might not have an awful lot of attacking players on the pitch, people, because he turned around and said the balance on the pitch was not right. Fans always want to see the best players, but maybe we had too many attacking players on the pitch. 8-1-1 formation on Saturday, people. What does that mean when we play Luton and Man City? You know, I mean, what are we going to have? We're going to have a whole load of defenders on. And I just wonder, out of the likes of Kudus, Paqueta, Bowen and Antonio, which of one of those 4 is he going to drop for a more defensive-minded player? Look, season's over. We're 9th. We might go down to 10th. If we don't win any more games. And I think Brighton, I think it is, that can overtake us. But Europe is long, long, long gone. Right, we talked about other players. What about some loan news? Well, Flynn Downs, again, had an excellent game at the weekend when Southampton beat Leeds United away from home 2-1. They're now ready for their first playoff game against West Brom, which is going to be held this coming Sunday. And I wish him well. I hope he does well. Now, I know Lyon were playing tonight against Lille. I don't know the outcome, so if you can tell me the final score, and if Benrahma played, that'll be most helpful. If Lyon win, apparently they go up to 7th place with a chance of getting European football next season. And considering where they were when Benrahma moved to them, they were under threat of relegation. They were near down the bottom of the league. They've done extremely well. On Saturday, Thilo Kehrer played, where Monaco beat Clermont Foot 4-1, and he played the whole game, and it strengthened their hold on being runners-up to PSG in League One. And they are, qualifying for Champions League football. So you can see Benrahma could qualify for Europe with Lyon. Monaco have qualified for the Champions League. Do you think either of those loan signings will want to come back to West Ham? I'm not so sure. Who else have we got? Christian Heggie was in the side, FC Den Bosch, who suffered a narrow home defeat against Emmen, which was the team's final home game of the season. With 1 game left, they look to have just avoided relegation, and Heggie has been superb for them in goal. So well done to him. And Nathan Trott, another goalie out on loan, played for Visual BK, who hosted Odense tonight. So I don't know what the score is there, but good luck to him as well. Some injury news, because we got weird ones. We got Agurd, who I've suggested last week is not likely to see another game this season. I think his injury will keep him out to the end of the season. Will he stay now that he knows that we've got a new manager coming in? Be interesting to find out. And Mavropanos, who missed the Chelsea, well, he missed the Liverpool game last week with a late fitness test, and then we all thought that he was going to be back for the Chelsea game, but there was no sign of him either. And of course, a mystery illness or injury Calvin Phillips has picked up means farewell to him for the number of games that he played for West Ham United. The women's team were in action at the weekend. They walked away with their second 1-1 draw in a row. Last week, they drew 1-1 against Aston Villa. And this season, their last home game of the season, where they hosted Leicester, also 1-1, where Rico Uefa scored the opening goal on 13 minutes. But they equalised on 36. And Uefa picked up the Women's Young Hammer of the Year award too. So well done to her. Let's hope the women's team can do an awful lot better next season than they did this season. Now, the playoffs, I still don't get it. Please, someone explain the playoffs to me, because I haven't quite got it for the under-21s. But West Ham United started the playoff quarter-final against Blackburn Rovers on Friday night, and they smashed them 4-1. Sean Moore, first half effort, put the Hammers on their way, with Callum Marshall getting a brace either side of a George Earthy goal, and a consolation came from Blackburn later on. So we finished. So now we've got, I think we're going to play, who have we got? We've got Wolves in the quarterfinals. Did I say quarterfinals before? Got Wolves in the quarterfinals of the playoff next. So well done to them. Right. The thing that you all want to talk about, Lopetegui, our new head coach. Well, incoming head coach, not quite a done deal just yet. So I talked earlier on in the show about what Lopetegui might be able to bring to West Ham. Shall I do a few more comments so I can catch up? Let's do a few more comments before I talk about him. Montana, I'll tell you one thing still. When we qualify for Champions League, then we'll never hear the end of West Ham. Oh, massive. I would love that. Mark, surely there's something good in Lopetegui for Bayern and AC Milan to be interested in him. This is what I'm going to talk about now. And I'll let you guys decide whether you think Lopetegui might be a good or a bad choice. In for me, please thank you, mate. I really appreciate that. Sharky, did you see both Carlos Tevez and Ian Dowie and wish them both well? I don't know how they are now, but I hope they're both good. Jonathan, based on the premise experience, that means Alonso was not good enough for us either. He his team took us and all teams apart for 45 minutes. Good point. Bill, hope the club now comes out with details about the project. Is it Steidten's or is he just part of the plan? Good point. Richard, Stel, who would have thought Sullivan would go for a goalkeeper with no outfield experience? Oh, why not? Razor, good evening to you. Amorim staying at Sporting. He is. Champions League. If Tim and Noble are okay with him coming in, then that's fine by me. Just take the crap about giving Moyes a good send-off. Mate, we got to. I mean, whatever you thought, you've got to say it's not all been crap in 4.5 years. We've got to, I'm gonna applaud him. I'm gonna salute him. You know, he's given me some of my best moments as a fan over the last few years. And I don't even know at my age whether I'll see West Ham United back in Europe again. You know, so I'll cherish those moments. Christian, Moyes has left us in a bad way with the squad. I don't deny that. A rebuild has to be done, and I'm a bit worried. I'm not overly worried. I think it will happen. We've managed to do it before, and maybe someone like Lopetegui might come in and actually use, Cornet might stay. Maybe he'll turn around to Cornet and say, you're useful to me. I think I can use you in a completely different way. Wing back or left back or whatever it may be. Garino. We had to let Fornals and Benny go as paperwork had been exchanged. Moyes was told a player was coming in on Sully's Airlines, which mysteriously disappeared over Faden Boys. Jack, I can understand wanting a manager with Premier League experience, but he hardly pulled up any trees, and then Neil has done a better job with the Leicester squad. That's a good point. Fair play. HH1, good evening to you. Anyone know how well Lopetegui does in domestic competitions? I don't. I don't think has he won any domestic? I think he won. Did he win a trophy with Real Madrid? No, maybe he didn't. But he's won a European trophy. Adrian, Loopy didn't show anything in his spell at Wolves that leads me to believe he's the answer to any of our questions. Okay, I'm going to get onto it in a minute. Let me catch up and then I'll get on to some of the things that I think are possibly good things about Lopetegui. 69 Claret, good evening, mate. Late tonight still? Hope you're well, mate. Thank you for joining. What a day. Most important thing for me is Lopetegui and Tim are on the same sheet. This partnership could work if they can work together. It's all leading, segueing nicely into what I've got written here. You're going to have to just be patient until I get through a few more comments. Bonnie, my other half is a Wolves fan, but said Loppy didn't stay long enough to prove his worth. Thunder and Joy, how are you, mate? Anyone is definitely not better than Moyes. Stop this delusion, please, and show some respect. There you go. David, good evening to you. I hope you're well. Bet we still be waiting for the end of the transfer window before any players come in. That will tell us there's no project and Sully is still director of football. That's a really good, interesting point, to be honest with you, because if we do start getting players in sooner rather than later, then it will probably prove that it was Moyes that was dithering. Don't you remember? You know, he used to be called Dithering Dave, and we used to be told, no, it's not dithering, it's due diligence, Dave. So it's a really good point. If we start getting players in from like the very beginning of the transfer window, it'll be a sign. But as other people have said, we've got the Euros. So that might just scupper things when it comes to wanting to get players in quickly. Mark, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. Let's hope we can unite once again behind the new manager, whoever that may be. That would be nice. Jerry, we need to get the business done early in any window. We seem to leave it late most of the time. They panic buy or we don't buy at all. Andrew, Sullivan has gone for the easy, cheap option. We're going to live to regret not getting Amorim when we had the chance. Garino, Spanish footy expert on BBC London, says about Lop, you're talking. I insist about one of the top managers in Europe. Razor, we have at least 150 mil plus sales to crap about any shortage of money. Yeah, I don't think we're going to have a shortage of money. Tim will sort out who we buy, and that's fine with me. Kudus, Areola, Alvarez, Bowen, Dinos, main players plus youth. Yeah, don't disagree with that. The real Simpsons. Who do you think will hire Moyes? Finished in the Premier League, so he can't extend his... You know, I bet you there'll be a team out there at some point that will go, Moyes is the type of manager we need to stabilise us. Will that be in the Premier League? I don't know. Will it be a team at the level of West Ham? No, probably not. But I bet you he'll be in demand. Mandy, good evening to you. Still, look how Palace are now after bringing in a new face. Let's hope we can have the same intent. Richard, still, there's never been a successful goalkeeper manager in the Premier League, nor in its predecessor, Division 1. You might be right. So what about in Europe? Mallard. Lopetegui is just too similar to Moyes. Surely Sullivan knows the fans that they want a young attacking manager, and that's all and all that I want. I'm going to go into it in a minute to tell you all about Lopetegui because I've almost caught up. Stephen, Steidten without a Moyes veto should allow some decent signings. Let's hope we start seeing some early doors and a few internal promotions to the first team squad as well. Absolutely agree with that. Let me scroll down. Who else have we got? David, Notts Forest manager was a goalkeeper. There you go. There's one. Razor, so glad we're having a party. Moyes at last sacked, and he hasn't been sacked. His contract's ended. Don't take the crab back. Joint agreement. It's contract end. It's not a sacking. Worst manager since Grant. Well, that's not true either. Adrian, start of next season, players will be walking around like first day at big school, not knowing anyone or where to go. How many players do you think we're likely to sign? GJ, a captain should be a defensive player. Further up the pitch doesn't make sense to me. I've never liked strikers to be captains. Midfielders, I don't mind. Defenders, absolutely. Dino's off. Thank you, Philip. Who else have we got here? Mr. McLaren. Well, good evening to you. Dino's off did all right. There you go. There you go, Richard. Dino's off. I knew there was one, and I knew it was Italian. Couldn't remember who it was, but there you go. Dan. Awful backwards appointment. The issue of Sullivan, not Moyes. And what's the point in Steidten if he doesn't choose the manager? We will have 3 managers in the next 5 years with no European football. Trini, good evening to you. Glad Alvarez stood up to Moyes. Richard, how can you know about what happens outside the penalty area if you have never at any professional level played in there? You know, everyone's got a comment to make, Richard. All right, mate. Bruno, Lopetegui is so bad for West Ham. He have one of the best squads of Porto, never wins anything. Worst coach I've seen in Portugal. Interesting. Thank you for that. Garino, wonder if Sullivan will turn up versus Luton. Seems to be quite a bit of anger pointed towards Sullivan for engineering this situation with Moyes and Steidten. I think that's an interesting point. Will Sullivan turn up? And what's more interesting is, if it all goes wrong with Lopetegui, will fans turn on Sullivan rather than the manager or the head coach? That will be interesting. Montana, I just watched Fonseca's side crumble to Leon. Am I being harsh? It looks like a Moyes tactic, subbing off an attacker for a defender. So sad. Well, maybe we've got away with that, not signing Fonseca. Howard, I remember hearing his live breakdown on Radio 1. Usual about who? You've got to tell me who you're talking about. Bruno. Amorim on West Ham, put West Ham in top 4 in 1 or 2 years. Amorim is, well, it's too late. We're not going to get Amorim. I doubt very much we will. So, but it's a good point you're making, because I know you talked a lot about him last week as well, Bruno. The true culture. Just got on the stream at the moment of my comment, but do you think if Bowen did finish his chances, the results would have been different? Well, let's be honest. We did hit the bar 3 times. We hit the bar. I mean, they hit it once, but we did hit the bar 3 times. Would it have made a difference? I don't know. It's the honest truth. We weren't at the races at the weekend, to be quite honest with you. We were really poor throughout the whole game. Obsidian, but yeah, good point. If we'd have got one of those, would it have made a difference? Maybe. Obsidian, just seen Sky and TalkSport saying how uninspiring Lopetegui is. Sulky will be shitting himself. He might not care about the fans, but he's terrified of the media. Paul, when Oggy 200 appearances at the week. I mean, poor Oggy. 200 appearances he made at the weekend. Great servant, but when he starts, your heart sinks. We're getting a spanking. Thanks, Moyes, and your small squad syndrome. Epic. Benny's loan deal has an obligation to buy, but he's not coming. I don't think he is. But is it an obligation or is it option? I thought it was an option, but you might be right. James. Amazed at some of the comments about our new coach. Did well at Wolves, and Craig Dawson loved his coaching ability. Luton will be playing for their lives. Absolutely, they will be. So it'll be an interesting game. Won't be a done deal, will it? Apache. Moyes will go for the nuclear option and play Fabianski and Anang as his centre-back pairing against Luton. He could do well, no, not that bad, but he's a proud man. I don't think he'll do that. Lee, Jamie Carragher said on Sky that Lopetegui would be a good appointment, and he did a good job at Wolves. Have a look at the top teams he beat when he was manager there. Bruno, Amorim rejects Liverpool and West Ham because not just a coach but a manager. He likes to have control. He likes to have control of the club. He's not a yes man, and so that means he wouldn't have worked well with Steidten. If that's the case, Bruno, that means he wouldn't have necessarily worked well with Steidten. That's an interesting point. Thank you for that. NWO, hard enough to care about the men's team at this point. Well, I'll talk more about the women's team if you want me to, mate. Mark, we have gotten in the habit of criticising the manager. Let's give our new head coach a chance. Absolutely, totally and utterly agree, mate. Who else we've got? Stephen. Downs, Potts, Earthy, Skulls, Marshall, Kodua should all be shoo-ins for the 24-25 squad, and then add a number of decent Steidten signings. Downs, yes. Potts, I said earlier, I think probably will go out on loan again. Earthy, he's there or thereabouts. Skulls, I'm not sure about. Marshall, there or thereabouts. Kodua, I think Kodua's a great young player, to be quite honest with you. Do I think all of them will make the squad? Probably not. But maybe at least 1 or 2 from there would be nice, wouldn't it? Alan, interesting to see how he gets on with Steidten and getting players in. If he spat the dummy out at Wolves because they wouldn't spend money, then how long will he stay while Sullivan closes his wallet? As I said earlier, like him or not, Sullivan has spent money and will spend money. Right, NWO. Moyes repeated transfers, mistakes, wasted time on Lingard twice, never had a big enough squad for 4 competitions. Absolutely agree. Kaiser. Lopetegui drew a few, but never lost a Spain manager. He can manage top players. He can indeed. Richard Stell, the breaking news is that Lopetegui Medical has revealed he is related to Roberto. Obsidian won only one cup in his career and has already failed at a big club. Who does that remind you of? Pellegrini or Moyes. Sideways step, Charles. Not going forward. Hammerette, we've got a head coach that insists on a balanced team. You play well, you keep the shirt, treats players with respect, works on praise and confidence building. What a difference already. Lee, how far am I? Nearly there. And then I'll do all you need to know about Lopetegui and how different he's likely to be to David Moyes. Bear with me. Lee, Moyes will manage one of the newly promoted clubs at around Christmas time when they sack their manager and need to stay up. Crafty Dave, thank you very much. I'll do it again. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. It costs you nothing to do so, but it will certainly help me. Do hit the like button, please, as well. And there's a bell notification to let you know when the next show is on. Thank you for that, Dave. Much appreciated. Delton, still, we don't have any choice but to support the manager because we're West Ham. Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And this is kind of why, I was always like, well, I know not everyone likes David Moyes, but try and back him because we're West Ham fans after all. William, but he needs to play attacking football. Going to get to that in a minute. Have I just done my, let's have a look. No, it's still there. Good. Gary, people keep saying that Lopetegui is the Spanish Moyes. Where are you getting that from? How did you come to that conclusion? Real question. I'm getting close to telling you all about Lopetegui. You may or you may not agree, but it's facts, not me that thinks this. It's the information I've found. Andrew, Lopetegui is a pragmatic manager. A lot of fans are going to be disappointed with his brand of football. Matthew, worst thing about the Euros is that it creates a bit of a shop window for younger talents, younger talented players. Some were probably on Tim's list, and other clubs start moving for them. It's a really good point. Looking forward, Vince, to a squad rebuild. Got no choice, really, have we? Bruno, I can see Lopetegui sacked in November. West Ham going to fight for relegation. Oh, mate, don't do that. David, Guillem Balagay, Spanish football expert, says high praise of Lopetegui, and he's good. When I used to watch, what was that Spanish thing about Spanish football? He's not bad. He knows what he's saying. So I'll take that. I'll take that from him. Do forgive me. I've got to scroll down to get onto the next part of the show. Dan, just don't understand the Steidten hype. He hasn't done anything apart from get a picture on a private jet with players scouted by other people. Moyes wanted Palmer. Steidten couldn't get him. Palmer didn't want to come, to be really, really honest with you. Andrew, Sullivan has put himself under huge pressure. If his decision backfires, the fans will not tolerate another negative manager. If this is how it plays out, I agree with that. Mark, can you imagine Moyes bringing his new team to the London Stadium, needing a win to avoid the sack, and Souček scoring the winner for him in the last minute? Right. All you need to know about our potentially new head coach, Julen Lopetegui. What will he bring to West Ham United? Well, let's talk about the sort of things that West Ham United fans have gotten tired of with David Moyes. And the first thing, of course, is the low block. Lopetegui doesn't play low block. He plays what's called the mid block. We know that Moyes was all about low block. A mid block is an out of possession strategy focusing on protecting the middle third of the park. What does Moyes do? He was protecting the 18-yard box. And we're, really deep. We always kept saying, we're defending too deeply. We can't do it. We're going to end up conceding a goal. And that's more or less what we ended up doing almost every time. We kept, unfortunately, conceding goals because we were so deep in our own half. Lopetegui goes for a team that does a mid-block. Its out-of-possession strategy is protecting the middle third of the pitch. Priority is to remain compact enough to stop the opposition from playing through you. Look at some of the things that have been happening to us, certainly this season and some of last season, where, teams have just gone through us like a knife through butter, as if we really didn't have a proper setup in place to sort of deal with that. Whereas Lopetegui is all about keeping it compact, so that you can't thread those balls through us. So it's going to be quite interesting to see if he can make that happen. And of course, when you've got that sort of mid-block lineup, you're leaving gaps either side, which means that if the ball goes to the keeper, he can lob it over, and you'll have players breaking free to go onto the attack. Once a team has dropped back into a mid-block, the priority is, as I've said, compactness. Distance between the players is an absolute priority. You're closing it all down. You're making it much harder for teams to play through you. Almost all mid-blocks are made up of lines of three. Lopetegui likes to play a four. His favoured setup is 4-3-3. And as the mid-block structure defends the middle of the pitch, the aim is to invite the opposition on. This can create space behind their backline. Now, as I've said, that's a huge difference. That's the first difference that we're going to see under Lopetegui. We're not going to see the low block defending the 18-yard box. We're going to be defending a lot further forward. During Lopetegui's reign, he did make Wolves harder to beat, which is why he pulled them out of the relegation zone. Next up, in-game changes. Another thing that we've been criticising David Moyes over, and rightly so, is that he doesn't make changes during a match in order to affect the game. You know, he does the usual, wait until the 70th minute or whatever it is, and then does the usual, puts one sub on. On occasion, he's done like 2 subs at half-time, etc. But the usual run-of-the-mill thing with David Moyes is that he doesn't use a lot of his subs. You know, he may use 1 or 2. He bring them on too late before and it's too late to affect the game. Lopetegui is renowned for making use of all of his subs if needed, but at times, making too many changes has backfired on him. I think there was a game against Newcastle when Wolves were playing them where too many changes ended up making them lose the game. However, David Moyes did that against the same team this season, didn't he? However, he has proven to demonstrate in-game changes can be most fruitful in terms of making substitutions and even formation changes. Like I said, his favoured is 4-3-3, but he will adapt according to need and take it to a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-5-1 or whatever it may be. We know David Moyes wants a rigid, structured 4-2-3-1 throughout the whole game. And whenever he brings a player on, whenever he subs a player, he'll sub like for like. And even if it's not like for like, he'll tell them, just like Ben Johnson, you're going to play in midfield or you're replacing this player and don't change the formation. Lopetegui doesn't do that. He's got a favoured 4-3-3, but he will make in-game changes according to need. And he will make use of his subs. And he said about substitutes or squad in total, the players that start on the bench, they have to become key to what we need. They have to be ready to be alert as each one of them can help the team change. These are the players he's talking about, subs. Sometimes they're not going to go into the starting lineup. And I know all players want to start in the lineup, but they have to know that sometimes they can be key when starting on the bench. Someone mentioned earlier on about sort of getting the whole squad together. Lopetegui has got this approach that, you know, he talks about wanting the whole squad to feel as one. So if you're starting on the bench, you still feel part of being that team that could, you know, coming on and making a change. Look with David Moyes. We've already said, people have already said, he isolates players. He only uses certain players, doesn't use them, he uses them sparingly, always uses the same players. Lopetegui's got the approach that if you're part of the squad and you've been named on the bench, be ready because at any moment you can be brought on to make an effect, make a change. And he went on to say, we tried to explain this to them, but it's not easy because every player wants to start. You have one kind of player who sometimes they think they are better when they're on the bench than they're on the pitch. And they are key in each squad and for each coach to use. It's very important. We try to explain to them that they're part of the setup so they know the situation of everyone. And it's important that everyone is able to help the team always, whether they're starting or whether they're on the bench. So that's another difference with Lopetegui and David Moyes. Someone asked about Tim Steidten. Is Tim Steidten on board? You know, and what does he think about all this, etc.? And will Lopetegui work with a technical director, sporting director, whatever Steiden's called? And he went on to say, well, we know that David Moyes has fallen out. He didn't want Steidten in the first place. He didn't want to be told who to buy and who to sell in transfers. He wanted to control all of that himself. But this is kind of different with Lopetegui because he's far more adapted to working that way with a technical director. And he recently said, again, For me, a key question is the idea that the sporting director or technical director has, because he's the one laying down the guidelines which the club is run on. If that fits with your view, if he has the owners and the directors on his side, convinced by the approach, then perfect. So Lopetegui is talking about the whole club going in one direction. We've been asking, what's this project all about? What's the Steidten project all about? Maybe we're now going to see the project come to fruition, because Lopetegui buys into having a technical director. Lopetegui buys into having someone that's going to work alongside him to get better players in, improve the squad, and so on and so forth. And so long as the board are on board with that as well, then all great, all fair and well. Now I know what you're all going to say. Yeah, but Sullivan. Well, Steidten, I know he's gone out to do due diligence, but one of the questions I asked was, he's doing the due diligence, but does he agree with someone like Lopetegui coming in? Now, it seems to me that it's the case that he does. You know, we talked about Amorim, and Bruno has made that wonderful comment earlier on about suggesting that Amorim wanted full control. It's clear that maybe that wasn't going to work with Steidten and Amorim. Whereas Lopetegui understands what a sporting director / technical director can do at a club, and he will work alongside him. And he's talked about the importance of having a technical director at the club. And he went on to say, if you know each other already, if they know your work, then that happens naturally. If they don't know you, maybe you go and do a presentation where you outline your ideas, you outline your strategies and your methods. Sometimes a sporting director can win you over when they weren't sure, or the other way round. Sometimes the moment is right. Sometimes it's not. Now, we heard apparently Lopetegui has won the board and Steidten round with his presentation. So I think it's going to work. I think they will work side by side. You know, we know that Lopetegui and Steidten have talked. We know if we thought that, or if the board thought that they weren't going to see eye to eye on this club project, then this would be a non-starter. And it may be, just maybe, that's why the Amorim discussion was so short. Maybe Amorim turned around and said, I want to do my own things my own way. Well, we've seen what's happened under David Moyes when he doesn't want help with signings, whereas Lopetegui would be more than welcoming Steidten to help him with developing, rebuilding this squad. Yes, I know that Lopetegui has been introduced by one of Sullivan's trusted agents, but if Steidten didn't think that this relationship would work, then I imagine it's unlikely to have gone further. And the proof will be in what happens in next season, whether Steidten stays or walks. Next up, the thing that we all talk about with David Moyes is possession-based football. Well, whilst I have always said it doesn't matter how much possession you have, it's all about what you do with it. And I stick to that to a point, because there have been some games where we've had no possession and won a game. But under Moyes, we know possession was low, 25%, 30%, etc. With Lopetegui, it's all about possession-based football. However, some have said that despite Lopetegui wanted his teams to have more of the ball, his teams don't score as many goals as they should. And that's case in point with Wolves. You know, they had a lot of possession, but didn't necessarily score as many goals. They're certainly more difficult to beat. And I think the mid-block is going to help there. I think Lopetegui is going to make us harder to beat, much harder, ironically, than the defensive-minded coach that we had. But we may be prepared. Well, I just wonder if Wolves didn't score as many goals because they didn't have the same sort of players that we've got. You know, if we play a 4-3-3, then the likelihood is, I think we're going to probably see possibly Kudus in the middle, Bowen out right, and a new left-sided attacking midfielder on the left. You know, with those three players, there's goals in them. So maybe with the mid-block, etc., we might get more goals than Wolves did. I guess we're going to have to see what the new dawn of style of football is going to be with the attacking players that we have. And maybe it'll work. And then finally, one of the last things that everyone's talking about is using the youth. David Moyes was reluctant, whatever, to use the youth. I've always said, and I still maintain, if the youth are good enough, they'll get their chance. Now, people are worried that Lopetegui is another David Moyes who won't use the youth. Now, Lopetegui has worked with the Spanish under-19s and he's worked with the Spanish under-21 national team, and they both won the Euro championships in the time that he was with them. His team has always had a mixture of youth and experience. When he won the Europa League with Seville in 2020, he had young players in the team. Players like centre-back Jules Koundé, who was then moved. I think he then went for a lot of money to PSG. I think he might be with Barcelona now. I'm not sure. But he had players like Koundé, who was 20 at the time, playing as a centre-back. He had Lucas Ocampos, who was only 25. Yusuf Nesri, who was only 22 at the time. So if you're good enough, and as was already been commented in the chat, if you're good enough, it doesn't matter what age you are, there's a good chance Lopetegui will give you game time. So there's a number of things there that I think maybe we've got to look forward to. We've got a coach who doesn't play the low block, will go for more of a mid block. We've got a coach who will make in-game changes. You know, he not only have to use all of his subs if he needs to, but he'll also change the formation if there's a need to do so. We've got a coach, or we've got a potential incoming coach that's happy to work with a technical director, and we've got a coach that is all about possession-based football, and we've got a coach that will use the youth if he thinks they're good enough. All those things are the things that we've all disappointed and upset with Moyes not doing. We've got a potential manager coming in, potential head coach coming in that will do all of that. So I think that is something to look forward to. We've got to look at what the positives are. You know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. There's no saying that it would have worked with Amorim. There's no saying it would work with any coach. But we've got to see how it goes. We've got to give it a good chance. We've got to give Lopetegui the opportunity to demonstrate they could actually do a job for West Ham. This would be a change. You know, there are a number of things there, you know, that's are going to be different. It's going to no longer, fingers crossed, are we going to see us defending the 18-yard line? Yeah, when we know we can't. And every time we drop deeper and deeper and deeper, what happens? The opposition scores. So if we've got, you know, concentrating on the mid-block in the middle of the park and trying to win possession back there, that's much better than sort of, you know, camping out on your 18-yard box. You know, the fact that we've got someone that can make changes, is willing to make changes during game time. Look what Alonso did when Leverkusen played against us at home. He made a change. You know, he thought, Antonio's all over us. I've got to make a change. Lopetegui is that sort of coach that will do the same. He will make changes for in-game, you know, to make changes within the game. He'll make those substitutions. You want someone that's going to work with a technical director? He speaks highly of having a sporting stroke technical director at the club. So I can see that there's going to be a relationship built there. And you want someone that's got, we all complain, not enough of the ball. We've got to have more of the ball. Lopetegui is all about that. And then someone that's very likely to use youth if he thinks they're good enough. Those, for me, so far, are decent points to sort of hang on to and say, let's give this man a chance. Because if he delivers all of that, it may be the dawn of a new era at West Ham. Just got to wait and see. David, Mark, can you imagine I've done that one? Do apologise. Good evening to you, GP. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining, mate. Thank you very much. Honestly, thank you. I don't expect it, but really appreciate it. And thank you for that, mate. Bonnie, Moyes will be like Big Sam, brought in to save teams from relegation. Yeah, I think that's the way his career is going. Pete, low block, conceded 70 goals, so that worked well. Dan, Pete, he's also won more than Howe. Doesn't make him a better manager, though, does it? Let's scroll down. Who else have we got here? Arnie. We want harmony between Lopetegui and Steidten and no interference with Sullivan. I hope what I've just presented to you might demonstrate that that might be the case. Matthew, I think Agerd and Kehrer could be very good squad players. Yeah, I don't think Agerd will want to be a squad player. He'd want to be a starter. I can see him potentially moving on. Dan, just as boring unless you enjoy the goal kick and back four passing to each other for 90 minutes. What do you think of what I just said to you? Andrew, I think now I'd be happy to take the 85 mil for Paqueta to help rebuild the squad. So would I, to be quite honest with you. Ryan, good evening, mate. Wasn't Amorim the first choice of Steidten? Surely if that's the case, they would have worked together. Well, don't always believe what you read and hear. I think he was on the list without a shadow of a doubt. Was he first choice? Potentially, we don't know. Ian, how far behind am I now? Not far. I've looked at a few videos about him, about his tactics and about his work on training grounds. He seems to know his stuff, and I think he would be better than Moyes. True culture. True culture. Benrahma got a goal in the game today, and he started as well. Scuds, baggy face red Knights dog would have the transfer funds. Epic. At least Lopetegui doesn't set up for a draw when playing against relegation fodder and the minnows. Thank you, Hamret. Much appreciated. Can he bring Ryan Ait Nouri with him, Johnny Mac? I won't lie to you. I don't know who that is, but I'm going to have to find out now. Have you wound me up? I hope you haven't. Danny, I'm happy he's on his way. Being a bigger Euro name, he may attract Europa class players as well. Paul, that was great. Thank you very much. Hamret, suppose as well that's because he seemingly wanted to be with us for a while. That's good. Who wanted to be with us for a while? Charles, good afternoon. Good afternoon for you from Oregon, mate. I hope you're well there. That's it. I've done it. I've got through it. When are we going to know for sure? I reckon it's a done deal, William. I think out of respect to Steidten, out of respect to Moyes, I don't think they're going to announce it soon, but I think it's more or less a done deal. Peter, as the great Sir Bobby Moore said, if you never concede a goal, you're never going to win more games than you lose. Johnny Matt, exactly. Can you imagine being asked to come to us under Moyes? No, thanks. That's it. I'm done. Have I got any more? I'm getting more and more, John, I'm getting more and more excited about Lopetegui the more I learn about him. Look, people, we've got to give him a chance. When I was reading, I won't lie to you. I won't lie to you. When I first heard about Lopetegui, my immediate thought was, oh no, another Pellegrini. You know, that's what I thought. And I thought, surely not again, surely not again. And then I sort of looked at his record at Wolves and I thought mid-table, etc., without sort of really appreciating that he'd actually got them out of a relegation dogfight in order to finish, I think, 13th or something like that in the league. But I've been looking at this stuff. I've been reading about his stuff and I've been looking at it and going, this might work. I see it. If he's going to work alongside Steidten, if he's going to sort of give us all this stuff that that he's about, his tactics, etc., I think it could work. Let's see how it goes. Adrian. Stel, extra time. Come on, Stel, Adrian. My video doesn't render for 45 minutes. William, Stel, do you think we'll be here after Saturday Moyes' last game? Stel, do you think we will be here? Who, me, you? I don't explain. Write that again. Didn't understand you. Ryan. Our season collapsed from January onwards. What percentage of the blame do you put on Moyes, Steidten, and Sullivan? I think maybe they've all had a part to it, but looking at the way Moyes has spoken about transfers in January, I don't like January transfer windows. You don't get the players that you really want, etc., etc. I think it was more Moyes than anyone else, to be honest with you. Andrew, looks like our first signing is incoming. Corinthians Wesley Kosova for 20 million. Keith, we've had great games in an epic cup with Moyes. Pass is new for us, so let's get behind the new manager. Be loud and proud and get behind the team. English Yardy. Still, to be fair, if it is Lopetegui, he has watched West Ham for over a year. He knows our defence is poor. I like the fact he is head coach and not a manager. Jonathan, I agree with you, Stel, but that is a lot of ifs. We need something a little more concrete. Well, personally, I think he's going to be our new head coach. And the reason why everyone is saying if is because we've still got a manager in place at the moment. I know it's been announced that Moyes is going, etc., but I think it will be Lopetegui. I'll be very, very surprised if it isn't. Scuds, do you think Paqueta will start house hunting in Manchester when we play City? His head's already there, mate. That's if City want him. That if City wants him. And I'm not so sure anymore if City do want him, to be quite honest with you. Right, I'll tell you how I'm going to eke out another 5 minutes out of this. I'll do a summary of the show so far. So as we know, the big news tonight, the club have made the announcement that David Moyes will be leaving West Ham United at the end of this season. They thanked him for everything, etc., etc. And, I hope he has a good send-off against Luton in our last home game on Saturday. memorable nights he's given us, given us, loads of the games, in Europe, etc. And of course, the most memorable night in Prague, which none of us will ever forget. And then I spoke about Chelsea, the Chelsea game, same starting lineup. The 4 guy was Alvarez, which I found rather strange. And then David Moyes making comments like, if only we had Declan Rice. Come on, mate, for fuck's sake. And then I talked about loan news. Flynn Downs was in action against Leeds that beat him 2-1 at the weekend. Southampton beat Leeds 2-1 at the weekend. And now Flynn Downs and Southampton are getting ready for their first playoff game against West Brom this coming Saturday. Kehrer was in action for Claremont and various others. Injuries. It seems strange. We've heard nothing new about Agurd, so no further updates. I'm not sure we'll see him for the rest of this season. Mavropanos, we thought he was near coming back against Liverpool last weekend. Late fitness test, he didn't pass. But then I was surprised that he wasn't available for the game against Liverpool, against Chelsea either. The under-21s were back in action. They beat Blackburn in the playoffs 4-1. And the women's team drew 1-1 against Leicester. And then it was all about our new head coach. And this is the things that I talked about. He does mid-block, not low block. So that's the difference. You defend from the middle. You don't defend on your 18-yard box. In-game changes, he's not averse to making changes, substitutes when he needs them. He works well with a technical director. He plays possession-based football, and he will use youth if he thinks they're good enough. That's it. Is it? Dan. The most important thing is that they're all on the same page. I can't deal with any more muddled thinking with strategy and transfers. I'll walk away. John, home to Seville in Europe was one of the best nights of my life. Always be thankful to Moyes for that. It was indeed a superb night at that ground. Obsidian, nice show, but I'm still loppy out. How long before Moyes out ultras start moaning about mid? That's it. Thank you very much. Have a great week ahead. I hope you've all had a nice long weekend. Having them the Monday. I won't lie. I was really hungover today. And I blame Wiggy and Paul for that, for keeping me out all night. Disgusting of them when I wanted to get home early. But my head has been sore. So it's cleared it up a little bit. So thank you all for watching. I hope you all had a great weekend. Let's look forward to the last couple of games of the season now with no pressure, really. Have a great one, and I'll see you all soon.